What if everything you think you want, every craving, every pursuit, every restless reaching, is not what you truly hunger for? What if success, love, attention, even intimacy, are only shadows cast by a deeper need you've never dared to name? Think about it. We scroll for hours not because we're curious, but because we're starving. We chase relationships not because we're in love, but because we feel unseen. We hustle not because we're ambitious, but because silence terrifies us. There is a hunger that lives beneath every desire, a hunger so old, so primal, so buried, that most of us mistake it for something else. We feed it with sex, with fame, with validation, with noise. But the more we feed it, the hungrier it gets. That's the paradox. Because what the soul longs for can't be consumed, it must be remembered. Carl Jung once wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And maybe that's what modern desire is, an elaborate distraction from the ache of being. But here's the secret most never realize: desire is a map. It is not the destination. When you look at what you long for, not with judgment, but with curiosity, it begins to speak. Why do I need to be wanted? Why do I need to be seen? Why do I fear stillness? These are not flaws. They are keys. Each one unlocks a doorway to a deeper self, one that was never lost, only hidden beneath layers of wanting. So in this journey, we won't demonize desire. But we will question it. Because the moment you ask, "What am I truly hungry for?" that's when the illusion begins to crack. That's when your real life begins. In today's world, you're praised for chasing, for wanting more, for never being satisfied. They call it ambition, drive, passion. But have you ever stopped to wonder, why does having everything still leave us feeling so empty? Why does achieving the goal only make us set another? Why does being desired never quite feel like being loved? We've been taught to worship desire, to treat longing as life's engine. Advertisements tell you to indulge it. Coaches tell you to chase it. But what if all this craving isn't a sign of aliveness, but a sign of disconnection? Think of it like this: a man scrolls endlessly through dating apps, not because he's desperate, but because his soul is lonely, and he doesn't know how to say it. A woman takes another job, another project, not because she's greedy, but because silence at home feels unbearable. We mistake this hunger for success, intimacy, adventure. But beneath it all is a softer ache, a need to feel worthy, to feel safe, to feel like we matter. We eat, scroll, flirt, post, consume, not to nourish, but to numb. Jung would say this is what happens when we lose connection with the self, the true self that does not need validation to exist. In its absence, 1,000 shallow desires rush in, each promising to fill the void. But none of them can. Because they're aimed in the wrong direction, outward. Real hunger, the kind that transforms, doesn't ask, "What can I get?" It asks, "What am I missing inside?" And that question is terrifying, because it leads us into silence. Into the stillness we've spent years avoiding. Into ourselves. But that's also where the truth lives. And if you're brave enough to go there, the next time desire arises, you won't just react. You'll pause. You'll listen. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally begin to feed the hunger that actually matters. Let's be honest, so much of what we chase isn't for survival. It's for recognition. For a moment, a glance, a comment that says, "You matter. I see you. You're enough." This hidden hunger hides behind filters and captions. It hides in our achievements, in the way we subtly mention our busyness, our success, our popularity. On the surface, it looks like confidence. Underneath, it's a silent question begging to be answered. Am I worthy yet? The hunger for recognition is ancient. As children, we learn that love is conditional. Be good, get praised. Be loud, get punished. And so we grow up learning to perform instead of simply being. We wear masks. We become who they need us to be. And in the process, we lose touch with who we really are. That disconnect creates a hole, a quiet starvation, and instead of turning inward, we turn to the world. We think more attention will heal the ache. But it doesn't. It just distracts us from it. Carl Jung called this the persona, the part of us that adapts to survive but forgets to live. Most people spend their lives feeding their persona while their soul withers in silence. And the worst part? We begin to believe the mask is who we are. So we chase love not to give it, but to be validated by it. We chase success not to serve, but to feel significant. We even chase healing just to prove we're better. All of it becomes a performance. But what happens when the applause stops? When no one's watching? That's when the true hunger returns. And it asks a terrifying question. If no one sees me, do I still exist? But here's the truth. Real recognition can't come from others. It must come from within. The soul doesn't want attention. It wants alignment. It wants you to remember the parts of yourself you've exiled just to be accepted. And the moment you stop trying to be seen, and start trying to see yourself, is the moment the hunger begins to ease. Not because it disappears, but because it's finally being fed with truth. Have you ever wondered why you keep ending up in the same kind of relationship, the same emotional cycles, the same moments of almost enough, but never quite? Why certain people trigger you more than they should? Why you crave attention from someone who gives you nothing in return? It's not coincidence. It's repetition. And behind that repetition is the shadow, the hidden parts of us that still seek resolution from wounds we never dared to confront. Carl Jung called this the return of the repressed. When a need goes unmet long enough, it doesn't vanish, it hides. And then it finds new ways to surface, through obsession, addiction, fantasy, or endless dissatisfaction. We think we're choosing our partners, our jobs, our desires freely. But what if it's just our hunger choosing for us? What if we're not in love with the person, but with the feeling of being wanted? What if we're not chasing success, but trying to prove our worth to a parent who never said, "I'm proud of you"? The shadow is subtle. It doesn't shout. It whispers in patterns. It shows up when we sabotage something good, when we chase what hurts us, when we confuse intensity with love. And every time we feed it with another shallow desire, it grows stronger. That's the paradox of modern life. We are more free than ever, yet more unconsciously driven than ever. Because most people have no idea who's really behind the wheel. It's not the adult. It's the child who wasn't seen. The teen who was shamed. The soul who learned that love must be earned. And until we bring those parts into the light, we will keep feeding a hunger that was never physical to begin with. Shadow work isn't about destroying desire. It's about questioning who's doing the desiring. Is it you, or the parts of you still waiting to be healed? And once you dare to ask that question, the world begins to shift. Because suddenly, what used to feel magnetic now feels manipulative. What once felt like chemistry now feels like trauma bonding. And what used to pull you in now awakens a deeper wisdom that whispers, "Not this time." What if I told you that society isn't just aware of your hidden hunger, but depends on it? Think about it. An entire economy thrives on your dissatisfaction. If you ever truly felt whole, at peace, aligned with yourself, you wouldn't need the creams, the courses, the clicks, the chase. You wouldn't be a consumer. Capitalism doesn't need you fulfilled. It needs you reaching. It needs you to believe you're one purchase, one transformation, one partner away from happiness. The system is smart. It doesn't just sell products, it sells longing. It sells idealized bodies, curated lifestyles, dream relationships, spiritual aesthetics. Even healing has become commodified. Shadow work has an app. Meditation has merch. And you begin to wonder, am I healing because I'm ready, or because it's trending? Am I desiring something real, or am I just caught in another loop of self-improvement that keeps me from actually sitting with my pain? Society has mastered the art of distracting you from yourself. And when you get too close to the truth, too close to silence, to stillness, to something real, it throws another craving at you. Another dopamine hit. Another person to impress. It trains you to see discomfort as a sign of failure rather than a signal of transformation. And that's dangerous. Because discomfort, true discomfort, is the doorway to awakening. It's the moment when the ego begins to tremble, when the old masks no longer fit, when the soul begins to whisper louder than the algorithm. But we've been conditioned to numb that moment, to scroll it away, to shop it away, to sleep with it away. We live in a culture of distraction that teaches us how to satisfy everything except the one hunger that truly matters, the hunger for wholeness. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most people don't realize they're trapped in a loop because the loop looks like freedom. But real freedom doesn't scream. It whispers in the moments when you resist the urge to react. When you pause. When you ask, who is this desire really serving, my soul or someone else's agenda? There comes a moment when the noise fades, the rush slows, and all that's left is you, alone with a hunger you can no longer deny or distract. It's not for food. It's not for love. It's not even for success. It's something quieter, older, raw. The kind of hunger that doesn't speak in words, but in restlessness. In the aching space between accomplishments. In the silence after the applause. Most people never stay in that space long enough to listen. It's too uncomfortable, too unfamiliar. But if you do, if you dare to sit in that sacred discomfort, you begin to notice something strange. That hunger isn't a flaw. It's a compass. It's not trying to break you. It's trying to guide you home. Jung said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And maybe this is what that hunger is, a whisper from the soul calling you back to what was lost beneath the masks, the roles, the striving. When we numb it, we suffer. When we name it, we begin to heal. But naming it isn't easy. Because what do you call a hunger for something you've never tasted? A longing for a self you've never met? You don't call it anything. You feel it. You hold it. You let it teach you. This is where the real work begins, not with goals, but with presence. Not with achievement, but with surrender. It's in this vulnerable stillness that you begin to meet the parts of yourself you once disowned. The child who was told she was too much. The teenager who had to shrink to be loved. The adult who built a life around being needed, but forgot how to need herself. All of them live inside this hunger. All of them are waiting to be reclaimed. And here's the truth no one tells you. You cannot fill this hunger with anything external. Because it's not emptiness. It's a space being prepared, for truth, for wholeness, for self. It's not a wound. It's a womb. And in that womb, something ancient is being reborn. Not the version of you the world applauds, but the version that never needed applause to begin with. The hunger isn't here to punish you. It's here to awaken you. What if hunger wasn't the enemy, but the invitation? What if, instead of trying to silence it, you began to listen? Beneath every craving is a question. And beneath that question, a need. But most of us stop at the surface. We try to satisfy the craving without ever hearing the question. I want attention. Why? Because I want to feel seen. I want sex. Why? Because I want to feel connection. I want success. Why? Because I want to feel worthy. When you stop reacting and start asking, everything shifts. Hunger becomes a mirror. And for the first time, you begin to see not just what you want, but why you want it. That's where the alchemy begins. That's the moment when the fire stops burning you and starts illuminating you. Jung would call this integration. Not killing the desire. Not shaming the craving. But inviting it in, sitting it down, and learning its name. You stop trying to erase your hunger, and start asking, what is it trying to awaken in me? And that changes everything. Because now, desire is no longer something that controls you. It becomes something you can dialogue with. And in that dialogue, a new kind of strength is born. The strength of someone who is no longer afraid to feel. Who doesn't need to run or numb or hide. Who doesn't chase shadows, but walks toward the source. That person doesn't just survive the hunger. They rise through it. And that rising, it's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's quiet, grounded, unshakable. It's the calm in the storm, the clarity in the confusion, the presence that says, I know what I need, and I no longer beg the world to give it to me. From this place, you no longer seek relationships to fill a void. You seek relationships to share your fullness. You no longer work to prove your worth. You work to express your essence. You no longer consume to feel alive. You create because you already are. That is power. Not control. Not dominance. But deep, embodied clarity. A soul that has made peace with its hunger and transformed it into direction. Transformation isn't just a thought. It's a practice. You can't just think your way into wholeness, you have to live into it. That means breaking old patterns not with force, but with awareness. It begins in the moments that seem insignificant, the pause before you reply, the breath you take before reaching for your phone, the silence between messages. In those spaces, the unconscious becomes visible. And the hunger. It starts to speak. Imagine this, you're alone on a Saturday night. The old you would reach for a dating app, not because you want love, but because you fear the silence. But tonight, you don't. You stay. You listen. And in that stillness, you realize, you don't miss someone, you miss yourself. Or maybe you're about to post a perfect photo, curated and filtered. You stop. You ask, am I sharing, or am I seeking? You feel the impulse to prove, but this time, you choose to simply be. These tiny rebellions, they're everything. Because each time you choose presence over performance, connection over craving, stillness over stimulation, you rewire your relationship with desire. You teach your nervous system that emptiness isn't dangerous. That silence isn't failure. That solitude isn't abandonment, it's a return. Jung would say these are the rituals of individuation, the lived moments where the ego loosens and the soul emerges. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's just sitting with your discomfort until it softens. Drinking tea without checking your phone. Crying without rushing to explain why. Saying no without guilt. Saying yes without fear. Every act becomes sacred when it's done with intention. Because what you're really doing isn't denying desire, it's realigning it. You're not rejecting pleasure. You're choosing depth. You're not avoiding connection. You're seeking truth. And slowly, something shifts. The hunger that once screamed becomes quieter. Not because it's gone, but because it's being heard. And that's all it ever wanted. Not to be fed by the world, but to be witnessed by you. There's a moment when you realize you're no longer running. The craving is still there, but it doesn't own you. The hunger still stirs, but you don't fear it. You've stopped asking the world to satisfy you. You've started asking yourself, what am I here to give? That question changes everything. It shifts the axis of your life, from consumption to contribution, from urgency to presence, from scarcity to sufficiency. Sufficiency is not about having everything. It's about knowing that who you are, as you are, is already enough. In that space, your hunger no longer seeks rescue. It becomes the fuel for your becoming. Jung called this the self, the archetype of totality. The version of you that holds all your parts. The messy, the holy, the wild, the tender. It's not perfection. It's wholeness. And that wholeness doesn't come after the hunger ends. It's born because you dared to walk through it. The world taught you to fear your longing. But now you see, longing is sacred. It's how the soul speaks. It's how the divine moves through you. And when you honor it, not with shame, not with suppression, but with curiosity, you open a door inside yourself that no external love could ever unlock. Suddenly, relationships aren't about being completed, they're about being mirrored. Work isn't about status, it's about meaning. Spirituality isn't about escape, it's about embodiment. Everything becomes simpler, slower, deeper, and quieter. Because real power doesn't scream. It radiates. Real love doesn't beg. It invites. And real sufficiency doesn't need validation. It breathes with ease. This is the new rhythm of your life. One where the hunger is not a void, but a vessel. Not a pain, but a path. And you are no longer chasing the next thing. You are becoming the thing. The one who listens. The one who feels. The one who stays. That's where the journey has brought you. Not to a finish line, but to a new beginning. A life led not by the noise of need, but by the quiet wisdom of your own enoughness. You may think your healing is personal, but it's not. When one woman chooses presence over panic, silence over stimulation, clarity over chaos, something shifts, not just in her, but in the field. You are not healing in isolation. You are deprogramming centuries of inherited hunger. Your ancestors lived through scarcity, silence, suppression. Their desires were caged. Their dreams postponed. Their hunger never spoken out loud. And now, here you are, feeling the ache, naming it, holding it. That is no small act. That is resistance. That is spiritual revolution. Jung believed that every individual healing contributes to the evolution of the collective psyche. And it's true. Every time you say, "I won't abandon myself today," you are breaking a generational curse. Every time you sit with your hunger instead of numbing it, you are rewriting a pattern that has been running for lifetimes. Do you understand the gravity of that? You are not weak for wanting more. You are sacred for questioning what more even means. Most people never get that far. They stay in the loop, consuming, chasing, collapsing. But you've paused. You've listened. You've asked deeper questions. And in doing so, you've stepped out of the old narrative. The one that says, "If I am not wanted, I am nothing." The one that says, "I must perform to be loved." The one that says, "I must be desired to deserve to exist." No. That story ends with you. And in its place, a new story begins, one of enoughness, not as a concept, but as a frequency you embody. This is not just self-help. This is self-liberation. And every liberated self becomes a lighthouse. Someone out there right now is watching your quiet rebellion and realizing, "I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I'm just awakening." That's how healing spreads. Not always through words, but through presence. Through the silent courage of the one who dares to stop running and starts returning. To herself. To her truth. To a hunger that no longer controls her, but now gently guides her home. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to be loud. A kind of fulfillment that doesn't need to be posted. A kind of wholeness that isn't flashy, but unshakable. This is the power you now carry. Not because your hunger is gone, but because you've stopped being afraid of it. You've stopped asking it to leave. You've invited it to stay. And in staying, it's softened. It no longer screams. It speaks. You now live from a different center, not from lack, but from presence. That changes how you love. You no longer search for someone to complete you. You seek those who complement the fullness you already hold. You don't beg to be seen, you allow yourself to be known. And you only open the door to those who speak the same language of stillness and soul. You don't hustle to prove. You move with purpose. You don't strive to be enough, you rest in the knowing that you already are. This is not arrogance. This is embodiment. The world may still tell you to chase, to want more, to not be content. But now you understand. More of what never fulfilled you before will never fulfill you now. Because your hunger was never for attention. It was for alignment. It was never about pleasure. It was about presence. It wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing yourself. That choice, repeated day by day, is what becomes a life. Not a perfect life. Not a life free of longing. But a life rooted in truth. And when the longing returns, as it sometimes will, you'll know how to hold it. You'll remember that your hunger is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your compass home. You'll sit with it, listen, breathe, and respond not from fear, but from love. This is how the sacred lives in the ordinary. In how you eat, in how you speak, in how you say no, in how you say yes, in how you return, again and again, to yourself. That's how you change the world. Not by force, but by frequency. Not by having more, but by needing less. Not by escaping hunger, but by honoring its deeper truth. This is the quiet revolution. And you are already part of it. If something in you stirred while listening to this, don't ignore it. That feeling, that quiet ache, is your soul saying, this is for you. Not the performance. Not the story. But the truth beneath it. You've spent enough time running, pleasing, proving, craving. Now, what if you just paused? What if, for once, you listened to the hunger, not to satisfy it, but to understand it? That's where the real journey begins. Not in fixing. Not in chasing. But in remembering who you were before the world told you to be more. If this message resonated, it's not by accident. It means you're ready to go deeper. To meet yourself in silence. To make peace with your desire. To rewrite your story from the inside out. And you don't have to do it alone. Subscribe to this channel. Walk with us. Every word here is not content, it's a companion. Every video is a mirror. Every silence, a doorway. If you feel seen, let us know. Leave a comment. Share your story. And if someone you love is caught in the same hunger, send this their way. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more truth. More stillness. More souls like yours, awake, alive, and finally home.